Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give folks just a minute or two to get signed in today before we go ahead and get started with our content. So sit tight, and we will be getting started shortly. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We're going to give folks just another minute to get signed in and get situated before we go ahead and get started with our content today. Thank you all for being here. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today as we go over the DISC analysis profile with our special guests, Dave Yoho and Associates. We're so happy to be partnered with them for this webinar. Before we go ahead and get started, I'd like to review just a couple of things about how we use Zoom for webinars here. We will be utilizing the chat functionality today. So at the bottom of your screen, if you roll your mouse over the cover page that you see, there should be a toolbar where you'll see a chat button. Click on that button, go ahead and feel free to use that to comment on the content. If you have any technical issues, Morgan Vera is on the line from Ingage, and she will be here to help you with that. So if you see her name in the chat, she is here to assist you. We will also be utilizing the Q&A functionality. So again, if you roll your mouse over this cover page, you will see the Q&A button. Go ahead and click on that to be able to ask questions. We do prefer that you use Q&A to ask questions so that we can answer things either right there in the Q&A, we can mark them as answer live for later, or if it's a really specific question and we think you'd benefit from personalized follow-up, we'll go ahead and follow up with you after our program. All right, so without further ado, let's dive in. So we have a great agenda today. We're going to meet the folks on the line, meet Ingage. I will do my 30-second overview of who Ingage is, and that's the last time you'll be hearing from me. And then we're going to dive into our content today. I'm so excited for this content because we get questions from customers all the time about how to hire, how to build out their teams. They have concerns in this environment. They want to know how to make the most out of every candidate. This content is going to help you to be able to do that. Then we'll have a quick wrap up at the end and have time for questions. For those of you who don't know me, hi, my name is Pam Torrey. I am the Director of Marketing here at Ingage. I've been here for just over 4 years. And apologies if my voice is a little scratchy today. I am getting over the illness that everybody has across the entire country. And on top of that, I am actually a classical singer in my other life. And so it's busy season. I've been singing a lot. So apologies if I'm a bit scratchy. I am so happy to have my friend and longtime compatriot in this industry, Brad Yoho, with us today. Brad is the COO and Vice President of Dave Yoho Associates. Brad, thank you so much for being here. I know you're off camera because we're trying to save bandwidth and make sure that we really see the content. But if you'd like to give folks your 30-second bio overview, we'd love to get to know you better.
Thanks, Pam. Thanks so much. Always love to be a part of anything that Engage puts on. I'm from Dave Yoho Associates, and many of you may know who we are. Our role is to help people become more profitable in this industry, and we do that in a number of different ways. Consulting, seminars, and some of our products. And one of our product offerings is the DISC profile. And what we tend to find is that a lot of people have misnomers, or they're not really familiar with how to use it, or they've heard about the DISC profile, but they don't really know what it is. We wanted to hold a session today to really address some of that. Again, I really appreciate Engage hopping on with us here today to do this. They're a great strategic partner of Dave Yoho Associates and have been for a long time. Go ahead and bring up the first slide here. I always like to set the tone what we're going to talk
Yes.
about. We'll start out with a quote. This is from Lawrence Bossidy. He's the former COO of General Electric, or GE. Nothing you do is more important than hiring and developing people. At the end of the day, you bet on people, not on strategy. But how does this apply to today's context? So first, the DISC profile. It's an invaluable tool. It's in finding the right personnel and avoiding the wrong ones. But let's take it a step further than that. Because if used correctly, the DISC report becomes a vital tool for onboarding new hires, presenting a roadmap for individuals to succeed in areas where they may be struggling. It also creates better understanding among your existing personnel on how to better communicate, motivate, and manage more effectively. So before we dive into the importance of using assessment and the DISC analysis profiles, we need to discuss the challenges that exist when you hire the right people and avoid the wrong ones. Will you go up and bring up that next slide, please? There's three realities here. There's three realities that impact companies when they're seeking to bring new people on board. The first is turnover. It's unreasonable to expect that you will not have turnover. In fact, for a stable organization, some turnover can be healthy. But you need to recognize that excessive turnover can be the death knell to your company and to your bottom line. The second one is mediocre hiring skills. Don't take this as an insult. Many of you on the call today may be exceptional at attracting talent and bringing them into your business. However, many people do not follow a systematic recruiting and hiring process. And when you have a culture that accepts mediocre hiring practices, it frequently leads to mismatched talents, decreased productivity, and it's going to stagnate the growth of your company. Just imagine a puzzle that's trying to assemble a puzzle with the wrong pieces. The big picture is not going to come together smoothly when you do that. The last one on the screen is quality of the environment, and this refers to both the marketplace where you are hiring from and your internal company environment. I want everyone on the call today to shift their mindset. Don't use the term labor shortage anymore. This is nothing more than white noise today. Stop the term talent shortage and understand that you're not seeking to find the people that fit best within your company and are not giving them the guidance they need to foster their productivity and increase their job satisfaction. You will have abundant mishires. And that takes us to the next slide that we're going to bring up here.
Right.
And
Brad, we are having some audio issues on your end. We're hearing a little bit of like in and out. I'm not sure if it's the mic or where your mouth is located relative to the mic. I'll move to the next page though.
Can you hear me a little better now?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for letting me know. Apologize for that, everyone. So we're going to talk about the true cost of a mishire. Mishire does not show up as an isolated item on your P&L, on your profit and loss statement. So for the purpose of this exercise, look at what the true cost of a mishire is, hiring a sales representative that is not with your company. So go ahead, if you could click on that graphic there. Recent industry surveys indicate that the average cost for a new sales hire, when you factor in recruiting and training costs, is around $2,967. And this is on the low side. After 30 days, with ongoing training costs and the cost attendant to an issued lead, it rises to $14,656. Factor this out to 60 days, 90 days, 120 days. But this doesn't take into account the ancillary impact that mishire can have on the productivity of other team members, morale, and your customer satisfaction rating. So, with this in mind, shouldn't you be doing everything possible to ensure that your hires are the best fit for your company, your team, and your culture? You can go up and bring up the next slide. I want to take a look at the hiring outcomes. First four are ones that are pretty normal, and you want to accept someone who will succeed. That's the first one. You also want to reject someone who will fail. That's the fourth one. The two in the middle, the second and third one, you don't want to reject someone who will succeed. You don't want to accept someone who will fail. But Using an assessment such as the DISC profile brings another hiring outcome into play. The DISC aids in understanding the natural tendencies and preferences of individuals. It allows you to pinpoint the ideal candidate. For certain roles or job positions, specific behavioral traits may be more advantageous, and you can prepare them for success. We're going to cover this more momentarily. Let's just take, for example, a sales role. This may benefit from individuals who marks in what we might call the influence or I category. We're going to get to this in a second if you're not familiar with the DISC. Roles that require attention to detail or precision may favor the marks in the C or conscientiousness category. So keep these things in mind as we move forward. Now let's talk about why you use assessment. That's the next slide we're going to bring up here. Here are the three main reasons you should be using a hiring assessment, any hiring assessment, whether it's the profile or some other tool. You're going to uncover critical information. Let's say that you're doing an interview with somebody. People hide things during interviews. They do. You uncover that critical information. Let's help you do that. The second one is to reduce mishires and decrease turnover. We're going to get into that more as we go along. It ties in with what I said earlier, but just think about how you can reduce one mishire or reduce your turnover just a little bit, what that impact would have on your company. The last one is provide advanced information. This is the third one that is not used enough. You can give people that roadmap and prepare them for success by understanding their behavior, where their strengths are, where their areas for improvement are. We're going to get into that a little bit too. If you could go up and bring up the next slide, please. Let's talk about the DISC analysis profile. That's our profile. We didn't produce the DISC profile, and I'm being told the sound's still not good. Are we having problems, Pam?
It's good for like a few seconds and then it'll bop in and out and we'll
Okay.
get like we'll lose a few words.
Okay. I apologize for the sound difficulties, everybody. I'm going to do my best to try and bring up the volume here on mine. Here I'm going to talk about the DISC profiles. That's our profile. That's the Dave Yoho Associates profile. We've conducted thousands of surveys and case studies on the results of the DISC report, and they are proven to be 85 to 90% accurate in analyzing the individual's motivators, strengths, weaknesses, and along with how to best manage them and communicate effectively with them. The profile was also designed for the home improvement, remodeling, and home services industries. It is effective at identifying direct or in-home selling roles. And the DISC report becomes a guideline or a learning tool for both new hires and through the onboarding and training process. Now, one of the big numbers that we run across is that people believe the profile is simply a hiring assessment. But if you're only using it as a hiring assessment, then you're doing yourself, your company, a disservice. But what I want to talk about next is that survey results button right there. Profile has been vetted by the Assessment Standards Institute. Now, let me explain why this is critical. This means not only does it meet EEOC standards, but it protects our customers from laws. And there's a law in New York. It's called Local Law 144. This restricts the use of employers of using most types of automated assessments. And so to clarify, because the DISC profile has been vetted by the Assessment Standards Institute, it's not a risk. There's going to be laws like this passed. There's a misnomer out there. People don't, there's a lot of assessments that are they're not designed well. They can disqualify people in not correct ways. And so because these things are out there, they're bringing these laws out right now. Ours is vetted by this. You need to be careful. You need to be very careful when you use an assessment that it meets these standards. So that is one thing we really wanted to share with you here. If we could go ahead and bring up the next one, which talks about the guidelines. These are important things we want to talk about here. It's not a test. We may call it a test because that's part of our language. It's a word that comes out, but it's not a test. There's not right or wrong. In the next one, there's no right or wrong answers. We tell people to say this when they give them the assessment. There's no right or wrong answers. There's no good or bad profile patterns. This is what you tell people when you give them an assessment. The third one, it's equally effective for every size company. It goes for any department. We have customers who uh, are multi-operation, and we have customers who use this maybe a couple times a year. It doesn't matter what size your company is; it can be effective for it. The last one is very important. It does not measure personality or skill level. So personality, many of you may have heard of the Myers-Briggs test. Myers-Briggs is very value added, but it measures personality. Personality is different than behavior. They're not the same thing. So if you could go up and bring up that next slide, please. If you can see what it says on the screen here, personality, what we are cannot change. Behavior, what we do can change. This is a critical thing about the importance of the DISC. Behavior, personality is often influenced by an individual's current work environment. Personality, which the Myers-Briggs measure, cannot change. This means that the assessment is going to give an accurate representation of a candidate's values, views, patterns of thought, and characteristics, but they're static over time. Profile, on the other hand, can change over time. It doesn't change super dramatically, but it can change. You can gain an understanding of an individual's capacity to perform the job role, but you're also provided with strategies for how to maximize their effectiveness and teach them how to adapt their behavior over time to constantly seek improvement in their role. You could click on that plus. Reminders. So there's some reminders about individual behavior. I'll go through these very quickly. You cannot motivate people to do what you would like them to do or what is in their own best interest. People are motivated to perform an action regardless of whether it is in their best interest. People do things for their reasons, not for yours. An individual's weakness may be an overextension of their strengths and vice versa. Remember, behavior is not right or wrong. It just is. Do not look at these as negative statements. They are simply truths regarding the differences in behavior that individuals have. You can go ahead and bring up the next slide, please. So this is the DISC analysis profile. We're going to show you what some patterns look like in a second here. Behaviors that it measures. D for dominance, I for influence, S for steadiness, and C for competent compliant. Someone's DISC pattern is calculated through a series of word choice questions related to their behavior, their preferences, and their reactions in a given situation. But it doesn't take more than 10 minutes for them to complete it. The questions are designed to assess where individuals fall on a spectrum of 1 to 100 for each behavioral trait that you see on here. Next, each response is assigned a score corresponding to one of these 4 traits, and the scores are compiled to create a profile that reflects that individual's dominant and less dominant traits. So now we're going to bring up an example of a DISC profile on the screen. This is just an example of a pattern. It's frequently referred to as the inspirational pattern. You can see the D is the dominant behavior, the I is the secondary behavior. That just means that you may also note that the S and the C are low. Now look at that midline, that horizontal line in the middle. When you still are new to evaluating the DISC profile, it is best to think about this as a separator, whereby anything above the line is considered high and anything below the line is considered low. Again, if you're new or relatively new, don't focus on how high or how low a behavior is, just whether it's high or low. That's what we want you to focus on. Further, it's not possible for an individual to be high in all 4 behavioral areas. It's just not. They can occasionally be high in 3, but the key to understanding behavior is that everyone has strengths and everyone has areas for improvement. The pattern that you see here, a high D and a high I, can be defined as a strong sales pattern. High Ds ask for the order. High Is are adept at establishing rapport with prospects. It's also a strong leadership pattern. High Ds are capable of harnessing the skill of their teams, even those with challenging behavior. And high I's strong communication allows them to be effective in others. Now we're going to share with you several DISC profile patterns in a moment. But first, I want to do a quick overview of the different behavioral traits that make up someone's DISC behavior. We're going to go through a comparison of behavioral traits. They generate ideas. They're assertive, direct approach to obtaining results, and they like to take charge of anything, really. But look at low Ds on the other hand. You can slide that down. They're more organized. They're less assertive. They take a more deliberate, calculated approach to obtaining results. The people persons. They like people. They want to talk to people. They want to engage with people. They want to be social. They're socially aggressive. That doesn't mean they're aggressive. It means that they like to talk. Be impulsive, emotional. They like promoting new ideas. Let's look at low Is on the other hand. Low Is are more sincere in their communication. They're reserved. They like to control their emotions. They think logically when they communicate. High S's. Bold, cautious, deliberate, predictable environment. They like working in teams. Players, is that all we always say? And they with people. Let's look at low S's on the other hand. They like a flexible, dynamic, less structured environment, and they want freedom of expression in what they do. I see. Very detail oriented. We always talk about them. They're cross the T, dot the I types of people. They don't like conflict. They may take criticism personally. Low C's, on the other hand, they have to be adhering to policies, rules, and standards. So we'll get into this a little more in a second. I'll give you an example. A great sales representative who has a high DI, they have problems following policies sometimes and rules and standards. I would say that's probably a pretty strong assumption with a lot of sales representatives that are really powerful closers. You could go ahead and bring up the next slide. We're going to talk about some of these patterns now. These are the 4, and then we're going to talk about a 5th one, patterns that people look at for a sales role. Start with the influencer persuader. Influencer or persuader pattern has proven to be the best fit for an in-home sales position in our industry. The primary reason for this is that both the D and the I are above that midline. The I is the main behavior. And the reason why this is important is you still have someone who's a strong closer, who can adhere to the system, who can sell people, but they're easier to manage. They just are, than a couple of the patterns we're going to show you here in a second. This is generally the best pattern that we found for that short cycle, direct sales type of closing environment. The next one now, it's called the dynamo or the inspirational pattern. Very high D, very high I. It doesn't have to look exactly like this necessarily. One could have this pattern where the I is just a little bit lower, but both are generally very high. Dynamos are inspirational people that control others. And this technique, when harnessed, can be highly effective in aggressive selling situations. They're usually strong closers. Do enjoy the context of what we call resistance. If someone is resistant in a sales environment, they may enjoy that. Now you have to be careful, because the flip side of that is they can really irritate and potentially damage your customer satisfaction if they go too far with that. Go ahead and go to the next one now. This is called the results driven or the results oriented. Very confident, but they frequently have a low awareness of their limitations. So this is kind of the inverse of that persuader, where the D and the I are both high, but the D is the predominant and the I is the secondary. They do fit well into aggressive selling situations. They command attention. They demand respect. They're not confused when they hear the word no. They do not mean no. They know that it may just be someone who understands everything they said. With it, you have to be careful if you have someone who can manage and harness and get the best out of this individual, because they can be challenging. So just things for you to keep in mind. We're going to go up and bring up the next one. This is called the promoter pattern, the networker pattern. People gravitate towards sales roles. They're very well liked. They have a high need to interact with others. They have a pleasant countenance. They smile easily. They light up a room. Look at where that I is. You just have to be careful. You see the D is kind of hovering around that midline. Their spirit of friendliness and openness does attract customers and prospects, but they may find it difficult to overcome procrastination or even ask for the order. They sense the latter may diminish their social approval, which is a high need. So just note that individuals who have this can be taught to adapt to a strong sales methodology. To sometimes devote more extended training to them. Just keep that in mind. Go up and bring up the next one if you could. This is the last one, or what we refer to as the coach or counselor. And this is the one that causes problems in the short cycle or direct sales environment. Because on the surface, coaches or counselors appear to be just what the doctor ordered for the sales role. This means that in interview, they're great interviewers. They're likable, they're responsible, they look for the good in others, and they like keeping customers happy and satisfied. They also present themselves well, as I said in the interview. But look at where that D is. The low placement there reflects an indirect approach. They will seldom push for a decision, immediate action, or a commitment from others. They see it as destructive to their image. They're not going to ask for the order. And so you just need to bear that in mind. These people can excel in other roles tremendously within your company, but in a in-home sales position, real problem pattern. So just bear that in mind. If you could go up and bring up the next slide. Now I want to get into something in the DISC report. And some of you may have seen this, but many of you are seeing this for the first time. One of the things about our DISC profile is that it not only measures what we call self-perception is, which is that main graph we looked at. That's what we call me as I see me. But it also measures their behavior under stress. It also measures what we call the mass. So the stress is what individuals will normally tend to function differently if they're operating under stress. Everyone interprets stress differently, but people do operate differently under stress. Let's take a look at that now. So if you can see there what happens to that behavior under stress right here, the D and the I go up. One of the things that we always like to take a look at, you see it in that middle graph there, the D and the I go up under stress. Particularly, we like to see that I go up under stress. It shows me that someone is working to communicate better with others when they're under stress. They're not necessarily trying to override someone's decision, but that I going up is a great sign for anybody who's in a communication type of position, whether it's sales, whether it's management, whether it's customer service. We always want to see that I go up under stress. That's a big one. The third one is the mask. And candidly, I'm not a big fan of that word because sometimes people think that mask means people are trying to hide something. And maybe they are, but it really means more how they're adapting to the people around them. It's how adaptable they are in specific situations. So if you could go ahead and X out of there, I want to talk about adaptability real quickly here. Adaptable people learn to meet the needs of others. So looking at someone's adaptive behavior, you want to look for someone who is flexible in their approach to various situations, and they're capable of adjusting their behavior, their actions, to fulfill the requirements or preferences of others. Adaptable people are not rigid in their mindset. They can effectively navigate different social or professional contexts by being responsive to the needs and expectations of those around them. So, just in this scenario, their mask, the D and the I goes down. What does that mean? It may mean nothing. It may mean that they're in a group of people whose D and I is lower and they want to find a way to relate to them better as part of their team. These are the types of things you look at when you evaluate someone's profile. If you could go ahead and bring up the next slide, please. I wanted to go over some questions because there's a lot of misnomers that people have about the DISC, and that's really why we're doing this here today. We want to touch on some things that people may not understand or know about the DISC. Can the person who is taking the DISC manipulate the results? This is a frequent question that we get. I would say that it's not 100% impossible, but it's extremely difficult. The DISC profile uses what we call a validity scale. This identifies inconsistent responses. And it also uses a repetition of questions format. Now, this means that similar questions are asked in different ways. The result of someone who is trying to, quote, game the system invalid profile pattern. This actually comes up sometimes. It's called a diametric. And this occurs when all four behavioral patterns are bunched around that midline. So let's say, for example, that someone were to send the profile out to someone and they tell them, they say, you know, it's only going to take 7 to 8 minutes. Do it in one sitting, because this is what we tell people. Get distracted, their phone rings, their dog's barking, their spouse or significant other calls them, and they step away from taking it. And then they come back distracted. They forgot what they were doing. Sometimes that yields an invalid result. So it doesn't always mean that people are trying to manipulate the results when they do things like that. Sometimes they just don't follow the instructions. Not everyone follows the instructions well. So these are just things to think about. If someone, let's say you give the profile to, comes back with that diametric pattern, don't assume they're trying to be deceitful. Just give it to them. Just try to be more clear in your directions. Give it to them one more time. The other question we have here, can you provide examples of other profile patterns that are a good fit for positions other than sales? So this is a very important question, because for a long time, a lot of people thought, because we explain it to people with the focus of selling on it, that it was just for this is nothing could be further than the truth. And that's one of the reasons we're talking about this today. The DISC analysis profile is not a sales measurement device. It is a behavioral tool. And regardless of your job role or need, you can use the DISC to evaluate someone's fit for a specific position. You can go to the next slide, please. So one of the things we've done with the DISC profile is we've developed a benchmarking tool for 28 specific job roles in the industry. And if you can click on the first one, I'll show you what one of these look like. This is for an installer. Again, this is for anyone. Everyone has behavior. You don't just give these to people who are applying for a sales position. So this is what you might look for in an installer or part of your production team. The thing on the left, the image on the left, shows kind of the average that you look for. The S and the C are the primary behaviors. You're looking for someone who is precise. You're looking for someone who can also be consistent. You're looking for someone who is focused, persistent. These are adjectives that you look for in someone to do that job. Again, the profile is not a test. It's something that is designed to evaluate how well someone fits a specific position. So if you understand adjectives that fit a specific position, then you're going to have a better chance of hiring someone who can fit that mold. If you can go ahead and bring up the next one, I'll show you just another example of one. This is a marketing manager, marketing director. You see that some profiles you've seen before. This is someone who you want to have a high D, high I, but you also want that C to be up a little bit, because this is someone who has managing a team of creative people. So that you have creative tendencies too. It may
Yeah,
not
I'm
need to
looking
be
at this, Brad, and I'm like, this is me.
There you go.
This
That
is
might
my
be
job.
that might be you. This is just one of the tools. We have so many tools. We spend so much time going over the DISC here. There's so many things you can use to help you make better hiring decisions and better understanding of your teams and working together and just growing. So I just definitely wanted to touch on that real quickly. If you could go ahead and bring up the next slide, please. Here's some more questions that we get. How can we provide our sales managers with guidance on how to use the DISC for onboarding, training, and development? To begin with, you need to ensure that your sales managers have a solid understanding of the DISC model. They should all and you should also familiarize them with the 4 behavioral traits and how they influence communication and work styles. In the onboarding process, your sales managers should hold one-on-one meetings with new hires where they elaborate on sections of the DISC report that discuss the individual's strengths and areas for improvement. We're going to touch on communications shortly, but they should understand how people prefer to communicate. Everyone prefers to communicate differently too. That's another thing you can use in the DISC. But one of the other things you can do, sales managers can learn how to tailor their communication better with one-on-one sales representatives. So If they're meeting one-on-one with salespeople, understanding how their behavior is a little different, how they can tailor their communication to better uh, to seek a better understanding from someone when they're meeting with them. It should also be included sometimes in performance reviews. Keep in mind that the disc is not top of mind. A lot of people give someone the disc and then they never look at it again. They use it to hire someone and then it just kind of goes in their system. And, a couple of years later, someone's behavior may have changed. It's not going to change dramatically over time, but it can change slightly. You can give it to them again a year later and see kind of what's changed and what's different. The other question we get a lot of the time, how can we use the DISC report to evaluate promoting existing employees? So I do want to say here, you need to start by understanding the fit of a specific pattern to the role you are seeking to place someone in. Take one of the most common examples, transitioning someone from a sales role to a sales management position. So if you could go ahead and click on that DISC profiles button on the screen, I'm going to show you what it looks like. So these are the four main patterns we discussed earlier. Look at that pattern on the top left. Influencer persuader that we talked about is such an amazing fit for an in-home sales position. Again, lies in the fact that the I is the dominant and the D is the secondary behavior. But this is precisely why it can be a weakness in the sales management role. Because remember this, managers manage people, not sales. So with this in mind, imagine someone with that pattern, that influencer persuader pattern, managing someone with that pattern to the right, the inspirational, or the pattern below it. There's a good chance that they will not be able to keep that individual in line if they're straying from the system or they're having a negative influence on their other sales reps. It's not right or wrong, it just is. One of the things that's critical to take into account when promoting someone from within is whether or not their behavior type allows them to effectively manage another person's behavior. In response to that question, there's definitely ways you can evaluate it when looking to promote someone, but you need to always look at who that person will be and who they will be managing and who they will be communicating with when you do that. Go ahead and go to the next slide if you could. Huge part, I told you we were going to touch on this. Here's, and you can take a screenshot of this, or I'm not going to go over all this right now. But feel free to phone or anything you hear. This is just an idea of how people were to communicate different types of behavior. Indicators and the reduced stress by, because we talked about stress earlier. High D's, overly critical and blunt. High I's are impulsive and sarcastic under stress. High F's are hesitant and apologetic. High C's withdraw. And so look at how you can reduce stress. So this is when you're working in a team, when you're managing a team, these are things you need to know. You need to know how people react under stress, and this gives you an idea of that. So we just wanted to share that with you here just real quickly. You can go ahead and bring up the next slide. Understanding the communication and learning styles of others leads to a more tolerant work environment. A tolerant work environment contributes to improved teamwork, effective communication, and the overall success of a business. Organizations that prioritize and promote tolerance are better positioned to thrive in today's diverse and dynamic work environment. But there's a caution here. Tolerance does not imply that you will tolerate habits or practices which are inconsistent with your company's policies. Words, that doesn't mean you turn a blind eye to behaviors or actions that are incompatible with the organization's rules and guidelines. So there's a limit with what you tolerate here. Yes, you understand people. That doesn't mean that you let people run amok. The distinction is crucial for maintaining a harmonious and compliant work environment where individuals respect each other's differences but operate within the framework of shared rules and principles. You can go up and bring up the next slide. This is another thing we wanted to share with you. This is called the compatibility chart. And if you've never seen this before, this is a great component of DISC. And I got Pam's message that they will be sending this out to everyone on the call. This is a great graphic. I love this graphic. I advise people when I talk to them to print this out and hang it up in their office because it shows the compatibility of different behavioral types. A lower intensity is indicator that there may be a decreased compatibility between two individuals. Now, this is not an impossible or an ineffective or team dynamic. It's just a caution and preparedness for what may become a condition of the individual relationships being formed. Some behavior styles just blend more naturally than others. If you're aware of the potential for conflict between two or more individuals, you can be better prepared on how to learn and adapt in a given environment. So you can note here, high D's and high S's generally work well together. That's the third one down that's in red. That means they work really pretty well together. Whereas the fourth one down, high D's and high C's, the one that's in blue, they can struggle together. So someone who has what we call the creative pattern, which is the high D, high C pattern, you can imagine what's going on in their head a lot of the time. They're probably not getting along with themselves. So this is just some things to help you understand how people work together, how they better relate to one another, how they communicate with one another, and how you can build towards a stronger cohesion among your team. If you could go ahead and bring up the next slide. I really appreciate everyone being on this program today. We're not over yet, but everyone's time is so valuable today. Setting aside time to be here with us and engage is wonderful. But I did want to let you know, I really encourage everyone on this program today. If you're not using assessments, if you're not using the DISC profiles, it's a very simple investment. What we're offering everyone today is you can place an order of starter set of the DISC analysis profiles. We're going to waive that one-time setup fee of $95. You're going to receive 10 DISC analysis profiles, and you can utilize we have two additional assessments you can utilize in the platform. First of all, you're going to be able to do this from your own online portal, where you will have personalized login information to access your assessments, including the DISC. And we're going to hold an onboarding call with you. Once you complete your order, one of our expert associates is going to set up your account and walk you through how to use it. It's a very user-friendly system. And we have great people here, a great team that can help walk you through that. So if you want to go to www.daveyoho, that's YOHO, daveyoho.com/disc, you can go ahead and do that right now and place your order. Again, it's daveyoho.com/disc. We'd love to have you on board as a customer. We'd love to have you start using the assessments to get better cohesion among your team, to reduce mishires, to reduce turnover, to understand people better, to understand yourself better. That's the other thing. Anyone who uses this, get themselves to start out with. Nobody, as a business owner, as a leader, as a manager, before you use a tool like this, you need to take it yourself first so you can better understand who you are and what your strengths are and what your areas of improvement are. I'll throw it back over to you, Pam. I don't know if we have any questions.
We
We have a little bit of
do.
time.
We do. We have a few questions that have come in. So a couple of them are a little specific, so I'm going to generalize them a bit just so that we can catch some other folks who maybe have questions here. But this attendee says that they have a sales rep, and when looking at their DISC report, they noticed that under the stress graph, the profile moves towards coach and counselor, when initially they were profiled as assessor appraiser. So this is someone who shifts like pretty substantially under the stress graph. Do you have any advice regarding what you do with someone who shifts that much?
So we always say it like this. If you have someone who's on your team already and you give them the DISC, don't use it as a disqualifier. They're already on board with you. You've already hired them. So you need to understand that. They need to understand that. The coach counselor one, if it shifts that dramatically, they need to understand that under stress, their I is going to go up and their D is going to go down. So sometimes, a lot of times, what we will do is maybe pair them with another rep who has a little bit different behavior. Somebody else who may have a higher D under stress or higher I under stress. Because it sounds like their I stays pretty high if they're a coach counselor under stress, but their D may go down. But understanding, understanding kind of what that behavior is the first step, and maybe pairing them with somebody else who has a different behavior who they can learn from would be my recommendation.
Great. So we have someone who asked, we have a couple questions actually about interviewing while leveraging DISC profiles. So one of our attendees has asked, are there interview questions you recommend, or do you have like specific interview questions when you're looking for someone with a higher D, higher I, higher S, or higher C? Is there like, do you change the way you interview with your questions to find those folks?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. The thing I'll tell you about questions is you have to avoid very specific types of questions, first of all, when you're doing an interview. So you want to avoid leading questions. You don't
Mm,
want to lead people towards an answer. I think most people on this call know you don't want to ask a question that can just be answered by a simple yes or no. But it, just give you an example of a question you could ask somebody. Let's say you're looking for someone with a high I. Um, the sample question you might ask someone would be, describe a situation in the past, how you worked or how you presented effectively to a prospect and built rapport with them. So building a rapport is a high I behavior. So you're asking them in an interview to demonstrate how they build rapport through doing that. That's just an example. But yes, we have questions here. I'm happy to, if you want to send an email to our office, I'm happy to give you some examples of that, of other questions.
great. Another question about using DISC in the interview process. When do you suggest using DISC in the timeline of a hire? Before the first interview, after the first interview, towards the end of the process? When do you recommend including it?
So this one is a little tricky only because there's different sizes of companies who have different hiring processes. So it's not as if we can tell a company who, we have companies who use hundreds of these a week. So they're sending out hundreds of these a week to people. We can't we can't say that they should use the same process as someone who may be interviewing, one person or two people every month. It's a little different. That being said, let's just take an example of someone coming into your office for an interview. Because what we do recommend, if you can do it, is to have them take this in the office. Because not everybody can do that. There's people who send out too many of these that's just not possible. But if you can have somebody take this in the office, it allows you to have more control over it. It's not that you're hovering over them, waiting for them to complete it. You just, 7 to 8 minutes, you give them the instructions, you go somewhere else, they complete it. Um, what we like to do a lot of times is have someone come in for the interview and then give them the disc, have that first interview, and then bring them back for a second interview. And I don't know if you do a second interview a lot of times. A lot of people can't do that, but a lot of times we do it in the middle, in between the first and the second interview. You do need to have some type of a vetting process up front. You don't want to be giving this to every single person under the sun who's applying, who's answering an ad. So you have to have some type of a vetting process before you give this to somebody.
That would be a lot of DISC profiles to be analyzing if you did it for absolutely everyone.
Sure.
All right, I think this is going to be our last question as we're getting ready to wrap up. This attendee asks, does the DISC profile provide insight into intelligence? Like when you're talking to a candidate, does it help you to understand, how their intelligence level, or maybe even like how they think about things?
A little bit on how they think about things, not really intelligence,
Mhm.
no.
It's
Um,
more behavior based.
yeah, it's really a behavioral assessment. Now we do have other assessments. So for example, um, if anyone were to sign up for an account with us, the what you see on the screen, the sales aptitude appraisal. Now that's not an assessment that measures intelligence, but it does measure skill level. So in other
Mm,
words, it's going to tell you whether someone, what their skill level is for a sales position. It might show you, for example, this person is relatively green. They don't have a ton of experience, but they show a high aptitude of learning a system, of learning a systematic training process.
mm.
Or it may show you that someone has a lot of experience, a lot of skill, but they're a maverick. They like to kind of go off on their own, and you need to know that if you're managing them,
The cowboys of the world.
right?
Wonderful. Well, those are all of the questions that we have. We will be sending out the recording of this webinar. So if there were any graphics that you wanted to be able to go back to and refer to again, we will send that out along with ways to get in touch with Brad and with the Dave Yoho Associates crew if you would like to get more information. Brad, thank you so much for being here today. I learned a ton. And I'm really excited to take this into my future with managing folks. And I think our audience got a lot out of it today as well.
Thank you so much, Pam. Always love being a part of anything Engage does.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, everybody. We are so happy to have you here for this great program. Like I said, this recording will be sent out after the fact, and you will have access to it because you registered today. We'll see you next time here on the Engage Webinar Network. Have a good one.